Sorry, the slide just won't move. So how do we support people with mental illness? The first thing we have to remember is that it's people first. You will notice that I'm using the terms persons with mental illness or people with mental illness. This is not about being PC, okay, guys? It's not about political correctness. It's about respecting our peers, okay? We don't want to stigmatize people. And let's face it, I'm a diabetic, but I do not define myself by my diabetes. People don't look at me and go, oh, that's Julie, the diabetic. You feeling me? Okay. I don't look at people and say, oh, that's that girl that's schizophrenic. And if I really respect her and I respect her privacy, I am not going to divulge her diagnosis to people because that's just rude, right? If people ran around saying, oh, yeah, that Julie Christiansen, oh, did you know she's a diabetic? Oh, yeah, she got high blood pressure too. Who cares? How is that any of your business? So, you know, we really shouldn't be defining people by their mental illness. It's stigmatizing, and frankly, it's just rude. They're people. They're people first. And when we label them, we stigmatize them. It makes them feel like they are not as important than us. It makes them feel like they are lesser than us. And that is not acceptable for the church community to do. The second thing we need to do, excuse me, is we need to acknowledge that we don't understand everything. We don't understand everything that a person might be going through. You know, I'm a therapist, and this is what I do for my job, okay? I work with people with various forms of mental health and mental illness all day long. Most of the people I work with are mentally healthy people who are going through a difficult time. But I also work with people with anxiety disorders and depression disorders and adjustment disorders and panic disorders. And as I said, 90% of the people in my practice are MVA survivors, motor vehicle accident survivors, and about 90% of those people have post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is something I come up against every day in my job, and I do not claim to know everything. It would be arrogant, and again, it would be rude. Excuse me while I take a sip. It would be really arrogant of me to think that I know everything there is to know about mental illness. I haven't read the DSM from cover to cover. I don't intend to do that. It's 1,000 pages of diagnoses that would just send me right out of my mind. So I'm not going to do that. But I do have an understanding of human behavior in general, and I know how to spot patterns, and that's what makes me good at my job. But even so, it's not my job to label people. It's my job to say, I want to understand what you're going through. I'm curious about what it's like being you. I'm curious about what your experience is, and I'm curious about how we can help you within this church environment. Excuse me. And even though I don't understand everything, I'd like to support you if I can. So would you teach me? Would you show me how to support you? And I will do what I'm capable of. I often say to people who I know have mental health issues in my church, you have to teach us how to support you, right? There are things that I know to do that we've put in place, but if there's something that you need, let us know, and we'll be honest enough and fair enough with you to let you know if we can provide that service for you. Let's face it, folks, in your church, in your church culture, excuse me, or in your church environment, there may be things that you are just not equipped to do because you don't have the people for it, you don't have the expertise for it, whatever that is. But if you can't provide support in some way, I think it is incumbent upon you to make sure that you know who can, right? And this is where church and community intersects, because I think for far too long, the church has operated as a silo within the community. It does what it does, the community does what it does, and never the twain shall meet. And I think that needs to change. It's important that we have connections to Christian counselors in the community. It's important that we have connections to marriage counselors, that we have connections to addiction services, to homelessness shelters. Do you see what I'm saying? When people come to the church and they say, I need this, and all we can say is, okay, well, I'll pray for you that God provides that for you, I don't think we're doing our job. I really don't. I think that it's important for us to be able to say, look, this is what our church is capable of doing because of our budgetary restraints or our lack of volunteers or our small numbers in terms of the size of the congregation. There's only so much that we can do. As a pastor, I can only do so much because I only have these areas of expertise, and my expertise is not in counseling. But I do know some really great Christian counselors in the city, and one of them will be able to assist you. You call them, tell them I sent you, and they'll work with you, right? We need to be able to help people make those connections. That too is part of rehabilitation and recovery. And so as a church, we need to have access to those resources. We need to build relationships with those resources so that when people in our church come and express a need, that we can connect them to the right people and we're not scrambling to serve them. The third thing I want to say is that it's better to come alongside of someone rather than to try to solve their immediate problem for them. This is so, so important. When you have someone who is struggling with anxiety, for example, and they've had anxiety all of their life, and they have very specific trauma incidents that they can remember and recall that are triggered when they come into the church environment. And all that we see is the resulting anxiety. We don't know the backstory. That's not a good time to start telling people how you fixed yours, right? And I know this feels a little uncomfortable for me to say this, but even when you've been through something yourself, and I have to be careful of this as a therapist too, because I've been through a lot of stuff in my life, I need to be careful not to make it about me, okay? I need to be careful that when I use myself as an example, it is for the purpose of helping that person to learn something or to glean something that may be helpful to them. It's not about me saying, I had anxiety once and this is how I solved it, because that's not going to speak to them, because I don't know their backstory. Their backstory is probably very different from mine. And my anxiety might have been resulting from something that's completely different. It doesn't apply. So it's better to just say to someone, you know what, I want to be here for you. And if all I can do is just listen, I'm willing to do that, right? Sometimes this has been my experience that I will offer to pray for someone who's clearly in distress, and they will say no. What they really need is someone to just be with them while they go through the process of managing their emotions on their own. And sometimes they just need to be left alone, right? And so we need to respect that. I've always, I've held up as an example a friend of mine years ago when I was a teenager and going through some really difficult times. I remember going to the altar to pray and just feeling like I just wanted to stand there and pray silently in my own way. I didn't want anyone to pray for me. I didn't want anyone to ask me what was going on. I didn't want to be bothered. I just wanted to be left alone. I wanted to go and talk to God, and that was it. And one of my dear friends came and approached me. She's a little older than I am, and she approached me and she said, Julie, is everything okay? And I said, no. She said, would you like to talk about it? And I said, no. And she said, would you like me to pray with you? And I said, no. Okay, wasn't trying to be rude. I wasn't trying to tell her to get lost, because I love her. I always have, always will. But in that moment, I didn't need any of those things. I needed to just be alone. I so respect the fact that she cared enough to ask me first. Do you understand what I'm saying? That she asked me first, and she said, is it okay if I do these things? And when I said no, she said, okay. And she let me be. She didn't pursue it. She didn't try to dig it out of me. I've seen people do this. It's not pretty, folks. people close in on themselves, and the more you push, the more they pull away. It's not good. If you feel led to ask someone, can I pray with you, and they say no, don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them, and it's about their needs. So remember this, okay, as you move forward. And I encourage you that when you're interacting with people, ask them, these are the things that I feel that I can do for you. Do you need any of those things? And if they say no, then you can say, what do you need? Right? What do you need? Maybe I can provide that for you. I want to share a story with you that kind of brings this home. Please give me a moment while I'm getting dry. And I've shared this story in in a blog post years ago when it happened. I used to be an adjunct professor at George Brown College in Toronto, and I would commute from St. Catharines to Toronto twice a week. So every Tuesday and Thursday I would go in. Yeah, I think it was every Tuesday and Thursday, and then I switched it. So I would go Wednesday morning and Thursday. Anyway, I would come in the morning, and then I would go home the evening of the second day. So I'd come in the morning. I would typically get off at Union. I would walk up a couple of blocks to King Street and catch a streetcar and go to work. And as I walked along, there were certain homeless people that were always in the same spot all along my route. And there was one man in particular who was always very neatly dressed, and he would stand on the corner with his head down, a little cup in his hand, and he would just mutter, thank you, whenever people drop money in his cup. And something about this man spoke to me, and so I thought to myself, you know, I'm seeing so many homeless people, and a lot of people are asking for food, and I just feel like I need to do something. So I started going to Walmart and buying, you know, the $1.50 boxes of granola bars and fruit cups and just things like that, and putting them into little packages, into Ziploc bags, and I'd hand out Ziploc bags. Some people refused them, and I always thought that was weird, but most people accepted them and said, thank you very much. And whatever I didn't give away, I would give to my students, you know, and just say, here are their snacks, eat what you want. So on this particular day, I went to give this man a bag with food, and he said, I'm sorry, I can't accept this. And I thought, okay, that's weird. This is the first person who's actually politely said, I'm sorry, but I can't accept this. Other people would be just like, nah, I don't want it. But this guy said, you know, I'm sorry, I can't accept it. So I said, why not? And he said, well, because there are some people in the city who have been inserting straight pins and razor blades and staples into the food so that when the homeless people bite down on them, they injure their mouths. And so he says, I won't take food from anyone just as a matter of my own safety. And I thought, well, first, that's really horrible that people could be so cruel to other human beings. But second, I thought, well, I appreciate this man taking the time to explain this to me. So I said to him, okay, well, I'd still like to do something for you. So can you tell me, what do you need? So this is point number 4. What do you need? And what he said to me blew my mind, changed my life. He said, I really just need somebody to look me in the eyes and talk to me for a few minutes. That's what I need. He didn't say he needed money. He didn't say he needed clothes. He didn't say he needed medication. He didn't say he needed a place to stay. What he wanted was connection. Okay? Why do you think people come to church? Why are people coming to church? They're coming to church for connection. They're coming to church so that they can connect with other people of like precious faith, and so they can connect to God, right? This is what people want. When this man, whose name is George, by the way, told me this, something in my heart just twisted and broke. And I made a promise to him, and I said, every Tuesday morning or every Wednesday morning when I come through at 8 o'clock, I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to talk to you because my class doesn't start till 9. So I've got time. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to have a conversation with you, George. I promise you, every week I will be here and we're going to have a conversation. That is not to say that I didn't continue to give him change, because I learned a lot about the man. I learned about the fact that he had post-traumatic stress disorder. I learned about how many times he had been abused. I learned about how many times he had been abused and taken advantage of by church people who meant well, but they did him more harm than they did good. I learned about the fact that he was always clean because he was a smart homeless man. He was smart. He said that he took the money that he collected, he made sure he bought soup or something hot from Tim Hortons, which was just around the corner. When he needed to shower, he would go to the Y and take a shower. And when he needed to do laundry, he would go to the Y and he would do his laundry. And anything that he needed, he used the money that he collected, and he would go to the thrift stores and he would purchase those things cheap. He carried everything in his little travel bag, which was also extremely neat and tidy. And that was how he chose to live his life. The sad thing about that was that he had to live his life that way because good-meaning people, church folk, Christian folk, took him in and hurt him. They probably didn't do it on purpose, but they did it all the same. And he learned the hard way that there was nobody he could trust. So he was safer on the streets by his estimation because he could look out for himself, he could take care of himself, he could keep himself clean, he could keep himself healthy because he knew how to work with the systems that were in place, but he wasn't going to subject himself to being victimized by other people again in terms of living with them or being under their care. That interaction with that man over the course of a semester, honestly, people, changed my life. Now when I think about what we do in church, I think about that through the lens of the things that George told me. I think about church culture and I look at it through the lens of someone who's been sexually assaulted. I look at things through the lens of someone who has audio sensitivity and can't deal with loud noises. I look at it through the lens of someone who has light sensitivity and gets sick when they see light strobing. I think about it in terms of the person who has experienced some sort of physical trauma and cannot deal with being touched, especially if they don't know the touch is coming. Okay? All of these things that we do in church culture are counter to enabling people to get closer to God. You have to remember that there are two types of people. There are people who are in covenant relationship with God, and there are those that God is calling into covenant relationship with him. And if we are the gatekeepers, okay, we might be doing a poor job if we're barring people at the gate. Jesus said, I am the door, okay? He didn't say he needed a doorkeeper. He didn't need a doorman. And if we're standing at the door and saying, no, you can't come in because you're not welcome here, or worse, yes, you're welcome here, but we're not going to do anything to actually make you feel welcome or make you feel safe, right? I heard something at the Mental Health and Faith Symposium that really, really spoke to me. And it was this notion that how can we go out and work in the harvest if all the workers are sick in the beds? The Bible said it, Jesus said, it's not the whole that need a physician, but the sick. So if we are the hospital for the sick, but we're taking up all the beds, how can anyone else get help? How can we serve them? One of the things I often say in our leadership meetings in my church is that if we have a church full of healthy Christians, we're not doing our job. I've never seen a hospital that didn't have any sick people in it. Never seen a walk-in clinic that didn't have people in need of service. People come to the church because they are in need. And if we are the hands and feet of Christ, if we are the body of Christ, we better do our jobs in helping to meet those needs. And there's nowhere in the Bible that it says we need to meet needs according to our agenda or our expectations. When Jesus healed lepers, he didn't say to them, well, you're too gross, I can't touch you. He didn't do that. He had compassion. He touched them. He healed them. So our job as the hands and feet in the body of Christ is to have compassion, to reach out to people and to facilitate their healing. And the way that we can do that is by loving on them. Okay, we need to love people. We need to respect people. We need to have empathy for them, rather than saying, well, you know, that girl over there in the back, she crazy. That's not winning us any brownie points in heaven, folks. And it's certainly not helping to facilitate people's covenant relationship with Christ. I know I sound preachy and I apologize for that, but that's how I feel, and that's what's on my heart. What else can we do to help people? We need to be respectful. Okay, so I want you to take a look at some of these slides over here. I'm going to blow this up a little bit higher. Okay, so you know what I said about those people who have the sick, who have the flu. Have you tried not having the flu? Well, yeah, that's not going to work. I get that you have food poisoning, but you have to at least make an effort. That doesn't make any logical sense, but these are the things that we say to people with mental illness, right? You see someone who's lost a hand, and the person is saying, just change your frame of mind and you'll feel better. No, my hand will still be missing, right? There's something missing here. I don't think it's healthy that you have to take medication every day. Obviously, this person is diabetic and is taking a shot of insulin. I don't think it's cool that you have to take medication every day just to feel normal, right? Do you worry that the insulin is going to change you from who you really are? No, the insulin is helping my body to process sugar so that I don't die, right? That's what it's there for. So why do we stigmatize medication for mental illnesses and not medication for physical ailments? I mean, the brain and the body are not two separate things. The brain is part of the body, right? So why is it okay to medicate my shoulder pain, but not okay to medicate my emotional pain? And I'm not pro or anti pharmaceuticals. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to say it's okay for you to medicate your body, but when you have an emotional situation or a mental health situation, it's not cool to take meds for that. Right? We have someone who's bleeding from a gut wound, and the response is, it's like you're not even trying. You know, well, lying in bed obviously isn't helping you. Maybe you should try something else. Well, that's fine and dandy to say to someone in a coma. What else do you expect them to try? Right? But when someone's depressed and they can't get out of bed because they're lacking in motivation, and it's just too much energy for them to put clothes on or to have a shower or to eat, and we say, well, you know, you're not even trying. So again, I want to challenge some of the thoughts that we have about mental illness and how to cope, how to get through it, how to recover. We need to be respectful. So we need to be respectful of their experience. I didn't put that on the slide, but I want you to think about that. Respectful of their experience. Respectful of people's privacy. They may not want to tell you all the gory details of why they are the way they are. Okay, some people will want to tell you everything, but others will not, and we need to be respectful of that. Be respectful of their space. Actually, let me go back to privacy for a second, because there's more to respecting people's privacy than just digging into their lives. Respecting their privacy also means, as I said before, not sharing with other people what you know about them. Okay, if someone has disclosed something that's of a personal nature to you, they've trusted you with that information. It's really important that you be respectful of their privacy in that regard as well, and that you don't go around saying, oh, did you know so-and-so had a mental breakdown? Did you know that so-and-so is suffering from depression? Did you know that so-and-so started taking medications? Okay, that's not your place to say. So we really need to be respectful of people's privacy. Then we need to be respectful of their space. So I was talking about the fact that when people have been sexually assaulted or they've been through some other kind of trauma, maybe it's a physical assault. I know people who have been held hostage in home invasions, all sorts of things. When they're in a church environment, they are not going to be open to being touched without having given their consent. So one of the rules we have in our church is that the altar workers always ask at least 2 questions. The first question is, I'd like to pray with you. Would you allow me to do that? And if the person says yes, then the second question you're going to ask is, do I have your permission to lay hands on you? Or can I lay hands on you? If the person says no, again, please don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's about them being able to reach out and touch God. It's not about them reaching out and touching you, people. You don't need to touch them. in order for God to move. Okay? So we need to remember that God is God. If we trust God to be who he says he is and to do what he says he can do, then we do not need to feel as though I have to do these things that are in keeping with my church culture in order for God to move and work in this person's life. You can stand on the other side of a room and pray for someone and God can move. You can stand on one side of the planet and pray for someone on the other side and God can move. You do not need to excuse me, lay hands on someone in order for God to do a work. So if you ask someone, can I lay hands on you? And they say no, respect that. Respect their space. I've seen it too many times where people lay hands on someone. I can see their body language. They get stiff, they get tight. Their shoulders are all bunched up. They're, going into their ears. And sometimes they even begin to tremble, and because of our church culture, we think that that shaking is, it's God moving on this person, and sometimes it's just sheer abject terror is what it is. It's not God moving at all. It's fear, overwhelming fear. And so if that's what we're creating, we need to step back, and we need to be okay with stepping back. So you should never, ever put hands on someone without their consent, right? A lot of times I will say to people, I feel like I need to give you a hug. Is it okay if I give you a hug? And if they say, no, I'm not really into that, and I say, okay, well, I just want you to know that I really care about you and I'm praying for you, whatever, okay? But most of the time when I say, I feel like I need to hug you, is that okay? Then people they'll reach right out, because they want, remember, people want connection, but they need to have that connection on their own terms. So be respectful. I cannot stress this enough. Be respectful. We need to be respectful of their feelings and their needs as they express them. Sometimes people don't know what they need. They know they need something, but they don't know what it is. It's not for us to decide for them what that is. It's for us to say, when you get it figured out, know that I'll be here to help you to get that, okay, to accomplish what you need. Until then, I'm going to support you in any way that I can. And if that means I'm just going to be here, then that means a lot. You don't know how much that means. 5 minutes a week talking with a homeless man, I saw that man come to life. The other thing that I thought was really interesting in interacting with George over time is that other people, because we were, it's a financial district. We're talking Wellington Street and York, okay? York Street and Wellington. So we got the Fairmont Royal York on the corner. We've got a couple of blocks between Union Station and King Street. And so, I'm at the corner of Wellington and York, and there's the TD Tower on one side, and there's the CIBC Tower on the other side. And I'm having a conversation with a homeless man, and people are walking up to me and saying, that was really cool that you did that. And I'd say to them, that's all he wants. That's all he wants. He wants somebody to talk to him. By the way, his name is George. And what I noticed over the course of the semesters that I taught is that while I would be standing there talking with George, sometimes I'd buy him a coffee, and I'd hand him his coffee. I'd be drinking my French vanilla cappuccino, and we'd be chatting away, and he'd still have his cup out in the other hand, and people would plop money in, and they'd go, good morning, George, and they would keep on walking, and I'd think, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is how we include people in society, right? Connection. And so if all we can do is offer a connection, it is better than saying, well, we gonna let you come to church, but you can sit in the back and don't you make any noise, because if you make any noise, well, them ushers are just gonna work you out the back door, because we can't have people disrupting the service. I'm just gonna let that sit there, because this happens. It happens, and it happens much too much, and we need to be wary of that. Last slide here. Prayer changes things. When I teach this course in my own church, I am quick to qualify everything that I teach with this idea that I believe that God is God. I believe that he can do everything he says he can do. Okay? And I do my very best, my level best, to act like it. So I try to act in accordance to my faith. Okay? So I know that prayer changes things. Why does prayer change things? Because I'm saying it, or because God is God? I think it's because God is God. Okay? God hears our prayers, yes, and he honors the prayers of righteous people. But at the end of the day, God is the all-powerful one, not me. So my job is just to bring the problems to him. By the way, he already knows the problem before we bring it to him, but anyhow, bring the problem to him, pray with intention, pray specifically for the need, and leave God alone to do the work, okay? We can pray for complete healing of the illness, but God doesn't always heal everybody, okay? When I found out I was diabetic, I was devastated. I can't even tell you. I was absolutely devastated. 30, no, how old was I? 40, it was 2014. So 45 years old, and finding out that I'm diabetic and thinking about the ramifications of that for the rest of my life, terrified, devastated, everything. Okay, I prayed. I still pray and ask God to heal me. But if he doesn't see fit to do that, I'm going to have to live with this, right? I'm going to have to change my lifestyle, which I've done. So the things that I can do myself to help myself to feel better, I'm doing those things. I promise you, people with mental illness are doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. They're doing what they can to help themselves to feel better, to improve their mood, to reduce their anxiety, whatever it may be. And they're praying for complete healing of their illness, but God may choose not to do it. Okay, we can still pray for it. We can pray for people who have been through traumatic events, that God will help them to recover from the effects of the trauma. We can pray that God will fill people with love, joy, peace, sound mind, right? We can pray for God to give them grace and strength to get through whatever it is that they're going through. We can pray for the peace of God that passes understanding. We can pray the scripture over their lives. We can do all these things. We can pray that God would increase their faith. We can pray that God would increase our faith, right? We can pray that God would give us wisdom, that he would give us understanding, that he would give us patience, that he would give us empathy and compassion to be like he would be if he were here in person. Okay, we can pray for the healing of the person's heart, that God would enable them to forgive so that they can be whole again. I mean, there are lots of things that we can pray for. It is important that we do that. I'm not at all suggesting that we come up with a mental health strategy for the church and then eliminate prayer. I think prayer is absolutely essential. However, we cannot impose our prayers on people and expect that if the prayer isn't answered, that somehow it's the fault of the individual that God was not able to do the work. Okay? You might want to rewind that and listen to that again. If God doesn't answer a prayer, it's not your fault. It's not their fault. God is God. He's all powerful. He does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. All we can do is place our petitions before him with thanksgiving and allow him to do what he's going to do. You feel me? So moving forward, when you're praying for people, pray the scripture, pray, ask God for wisdom, ask for guidance, ask for compassion, ask for empathy, ask for him to show you how you can best support and assist people, right? Ask him to lead you to good resources in the community so that you can share those resources with people who need them. Okay, perhaps even bring some of those resources into the church, brochures, flyers, business cards, whatever. Set it up somewhere so that people can access those resources. If they want to maintain their privacy, they can do so, and they can still get the information they need with a semblance of dignity. Okay, there's so much more that I want to share, but I'm running out of time. It's 20 after 2, so I've got about 10 minutes left on this call, and I'm so sorry, Nicole, that I can't see you or hear you. I'm going to have to work on the Zoom chat features to sort that out. But I do want to mention that this, here, let me close this. Let me stop the share. That this has been recorded, and I will be sharing this recording with, sorry, I'm going to switch this around. I'm trying so hard to, I've changed the gallery view. There we go. This is being recorded, and I will have the recording up and online for people who were not able. There were people who registered today but are not with us, and so they'll be able to access this after the fact. And I also have an online course that I have prepared as an adjunct to this, because at the beginning I was going to do like a 3-hour webinar, and I thought I can't talk to a computer for 3 hours straight, and that's just going to be boring for the people who are involved as well. So I've set up an online course. It's called Mental Health 101 for Faith Communities, and in the days to come and follow up to this webinar, you'll be getting an email that invites you to participate in that course. I have priced it ridiculously low because I just want this information to get into the hands of people, and so I've priced it at $39. It's a 4-part course. It talks about the who, the what, and the how. So, or the what, the why, and the how. I apologize. So what is it that we're discussing? Mental health in the church community, obviously. Why is it important? So we'll talk about the reasons why it's time for us to change our strategies and develop something that enables people with mental health issues to feel comfortable within a church environment. And then the how, and this is the most important part, I'm going to share with you the strategy and the process that we have implemented at New Life Church Niagara in St. Catharines, Ontario, where I attend, and I'm part of the leadership team there. I will share with you our strategy and our protocol for supporting persons with mental health issues. This is really valuable information. It's probably another 3 hours worth of study if I were to, talk through it. But as it's divided up into 4 parts, you can take this in nuggets that are manageable for you, and you can study at your own pace. And so that's why I've set it up this way. So today's webinar has really just been an introduction, a primer to get you thinking about things and how you can begin to change your church culture. And then if you want to delve deeper and you want to implement a mental health strategy in your own church community, I encourage you to take the Mental Health 101 course. Like I say, it's $39. It's 4 parts so that you can study at your own pace. Each part comes with video as well as printouts and assessments, all sorts of goodies that you can use to help you just to improve your knowledge and your competency in this area so that you can serve people who have mental illnesses within your church body. The last thing I want to share with you, just as an adjunct, but I have these things in my library and I think they're useful. I don't know if you're familiar with June Hunt of Hope for the Heart. She is a radio personality. She's the founder of Hope for the Heart. It's a biblical counseling ministry. She has some terrific counseling tools which are available online through her Hope for the Heart website. Really, really affordable, and I have them here, some of them in my office. So she's got resources on biblical counseling for rape recovery, for sexual integrity, domestic violence. That's a whole other webinar, guys, which we're going to be talking about sooner or later. Verbal and emotional abuse, victory over the victim mentality for people who have been victimized. Really, really terrific resources, and I keep them here because I surprisingly do a lot of faith-based counseling at people's request, and so it's great to have these biblically based counseling tools available and on hand. And if you have a church library, I would recommend that you get these books and keep them in your church lending library so that people can access them. Again, we want to facilitate recovery and healing, and sometimes we do that best silently. Just make sure the resources are there and that people know they're there and have access to them, and let God do the work. Okay, it's 2:25. I haven't seen any questions come through via chat, but if you have any questions, I encourage you to throw them up there. I'm happy to answer. But again, moving forward, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to throw in my my email address, which is info@anchorsolution.com, if you have any questions. And certainly moving forward, please feel free to reach out to me privately through messaging, and I'm happy to answer your questions. And certainly if you're looking for someone to come in and bring training to your church body, I'm absolutely happy to do that as well. So thank you so much for being on with me today for this webinar. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do that. And I hope that this has been helpful and that it will be a blessing to you moving forward. Again, please contact me at info@anchorsolution.com if you have any questions moving forward after this. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Appreciate it. Take care for now.